Where do you feel our focus overseas should be right now, in Iraq or Afghanistan?
I think our focus should be in both countries, but with peaceful intent rather than with the idea of projecting, more and more bombings and deaths and destruction, because we haven't won the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people after 5 and 6 years. There's a very unsteady peace. There are walls built up between neighborhoods. There are, checkpoints everywhere. It's not a free democracy and a very happy family. We need to work. We need a Department of Peace. That's one of the Green Party's main platforms, is that we need a Department of Peace. We're spending now, this year, over $1 trillion on war-related spending. It's just phenomenal. It keeps growing and growing, and we're getting tough, and we're getting, we're really looking out for protecting our interests. But look at what it's doing to our economy with this huge budget and not having money for all the things that our people need here in the U.S. And so I would have a much more peaceful approach to those two countries. Thank you.
The answer is both. You cannot ignore either country. 2 years ago, a little more than that, I was in Baghdad. Very, very, very miserable situation. A lot of violence. We were working to try to rebuild the infrastructure for agriculture there. What I observed was a very, very tough situation. Men and women in uniform from Nebraska that I met with said, look, we're making progress. And I look back on those statements today, and they were right. It is much improved. Afghanistan, you have to commit the resources necessary to deal with Afghanistan. Again, we had a presence in Afghanistan from the USDA standpoint. We felt we were making some progress there, but you got to have security. We cannot advance agriculture, for example, which is the economy that will lead both nations, without stabilizing the security situation. You need that presence built up in Afghanistan.
But unfortunately, we didn't. I mean, we all know about the brave sacrifice of our soldiers in Iraq and that they've overcome tremendous odds to do what they've done. Despite all the hurdles that they faced, they've been remarkable. That we have the beginnings of a security system now in Iraq that needs to take hold, that even the president says we need to begin to pull our troops back from Iraq to allow the Iraqis to take control of their future, take their own control of their own future and their own country. It seems only Mr. Johans is the only one who stays the same thing that we've been hearing for the past 7 years. Even the president agrees that we can change our policy in Iraq in order to face the growing threat that we have in Afghanistan. Because the fact of the matter is, in Afghanistan, heroin traffic is up, the Taliban is resurgent, they're now more secure in border regions between Afghanistan and Pakistan than they've ever been. That we are losing in Iraq, and even, losing in Afghanistan, even the Pentagon recognizes this with the new report that just came out. Now, the fact of the matter is we could have and should have been much stronger when it comes to diplomacy with Pakistan, and says, we're not going to give you the support that you are asking for unless you target it to the areas that the Taliban are. Instead, they used it elsewhere. We have not been that secure. We need strong and smart foreign policy again.
Mr. Johans, today you were named in a congressional committee report as taking 38 trips in 2006 on taxpayer expense at the request of Karl Rove and the White House to elect Republican candidates for office. My question to all of you is, do you favor a revision of the Hatch Act to remove the White House Office of Political Affairs from federal funding and to not pay travel expenses of cabinet and other senior officials to fly across the country for a re-election affairs?
Here's what I would offer in terms of your question. Your question really has it very, very wrong. This was not a question of travel. Cabinet members can travel for political purpose, they can travel for governmental purpose, they can do all of those things. The question arose in the allocation of the cost. Professionals at USDA handle the allocation of cost, not the secretary or the deputy secretary or the assistant to the secretary. It's professionals there. And they objected to how that cost was allocated. I'm sure that that is going to be challenged. I wouldn't have any doubt about that. But from my standpoint, having served there, I didn't need another trip. Quite honestly, I think that would be a great idea. And I think it would clear up all of this confusion about cost allocation.
You know, it is remarkable. All the good ideas when you're running for another office. You had the opportunity to say this is wrong. Why are we using taxpayer dollars for political purpose? I mean, that's ultimately it, right? I mean, if you break it down, we are using taxpayer dollars right now to serve political ends, to elect people of your own party, to carry water for somebody that you now disagree with. Say you don't believe in amnesty, but you do, and you campaign for it. That this is really what we're talking about, the use of the use of taxpayer dollars to serve campaign purposes, and it's wrong. It's one thing to say that you're a fiscal conservative. It's another thing to actually act like it. To not spend $20 million on junkets for USDA officials all around the world and close down 10 FSA offices here in Nebraska. That's not fiscally conservative. That's just wrong. That's a misuse of taxpayer dollars, and it is extremely troubling. And it troubles me even more that all the good ideas seem to come after the fact. This is about judgment, right and wrong judgment.
I think that we do need a tougher enforcement in the Hatch Act, and I'll give you examples of when I was running for Congress in 2004 against Jeff Fortenberry. Dick Cheney flew in on one of the presidential jets into Lincoln and came into the embassy suites, and we had to close off streets in the city. We had a whole legion of police officers running security and getting him to his place, and then he's standing there, you know, it's a fundraiser for Jeff Fortenberry, and he's getting $5,000 per picture with Dick Cheney. And to me, that's really a misuse of our political system. We need public financing of almost the
water
same.
bottles.
Flood control.
I was a goalie in college, but we need political reform, and public funding of campaigns is something that they're doing in many states. And then if we're on equal footing, it's just a matter of who has the best ideas, who's going to do most for the people. It's not whether, my opponents both getting over 60% of their money outside the state of Nebraska, many big moneyed interests. And so, yeah, grassroots democracy.